The state of Hawaii is moving forward with the 30-meter telescope project on Mauna Kea. The University of Hawaii's permit to build the observatory was approved Thursday with a 5-2 vote by the Hawaii Board of Land and Natural Resources, adopting the recommendation made by the hearing officer in the year-long contested case. The BLNR's decision and order was 345 pages long. The document reveals the 2 no votes, both accompanied by short, handwritten statements of, "I do not concur." The no votes were Stanley Roerig and Keith Downing. The decision follows the final Land Board hearing held in Hilo on September 20th. The hearing was televised and live-streamed by Naleo TV. 21 participants had the chance to present oral arguments before the Land Board. The University of Hawaii at Hilo and the interveners in support of the project, TMT International Observatory, LLC, and Pueo, the nonprofit perpetuating unique educational opportunities, went first.
Nothing should prevent this board from granting the CDUP, subject to the proposed conditions that fulfills the board's special obligation to protect Native Hawaiian rights.
Astronomers are people too. They too follow the winds of their souls. They are protectors. They protect the quest for knowledge. They are voyagers voyaging back in time in a quest for knowledge. They are on a mission. They're on a mission of discovery and understanding. They search not for islands. They search for knowledge, and they search for the origin of life. So let's continue this pursuit. Let's reach to the stars. I urge you to grant this permit. Thank you.
Pueo is not aligned with the university. Pueo is not aligned with TIO. Pueo is not aligned with the other interveners. Instead, Pueo believes that development of the telescope can be done, but only if done in a culturally sensitive way, in a culturally sensitive manner.
Then the original petitioners, those who opposed the TMT on Mauna Kea and who took part in the first contested case hearing back in 2011, went next.
The hearing officer, for all intents and purposes, just didn't do that consideration. She cut and pasted basically the university's and TIO's, TMT's positions. And what the problem with that is that it violates the law under 92-12, where each position, according to the university, there are over 5,000 findings of fact and conclusions of law combined. So she needed to actually look at those and make a ruling on those individually. I mean, I'm not saying that she, if they were all related to one issue, I'm sure she could have combined them all. But she needs to respond to them, because without responding to them, it takes away our right to ask for a motion for reconsideration. We don't even know what the problem is. And more importantly, it gives you an incorrect idea of what this hearing was actually about.
During the last 2 years, DLNR has lost 4 lawsuits upholding the due process and civil rights of Native Hawaiians, starting with the December 2015 Supreme Court decision vacating BLNR's CDUA for the TMT, and then followed by 3 lower court rulings, one voiding BLNR's emergency access rules during the TMT protests, one voiding several do-care arrests of Native Hawaiians trying to protect their mountain from desecration, and one vacating BLNR's consent of the TMT's UH-issued sublease. Why is it that the courts must step in to fix reversible errors committed by DLNR?
We would take the position, and we submit, that Kila Kila does not apply to the TMT project for Mauna Kea. Again, what is clear about the TMT project is that it is proposed to be constructed on undeveloped, pristine area separate from the astronomy precinct on Mauna Kea. On Haleakala, the telescope that was mentioned or actually considered as part of the Kila Kila decision was actually being built within the science district. I believe it was also on recycled property. So there is a huge distinction between Kila Kila and what is proposed here on Mauna Kea, and in fact, we submit that Kila Kila is not applicable.
How dare you say we do not impede our practice? It's insulting to our people. It's the Aloha Spirit law. The law is more than a word of greeting and farewell and salutation. It's more than mutual regard and affection. Aloha is the essence of relationship. Aloha means to hear what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. This is the gift of my people for Hawaii's people.
But when the sublease was put together, where was TMT Observatory Corporation, the designated beneficiary? The name that showed up on the sublease was TMT International Observatory LLC, and how that happened, I don't know, because there are no supporting documents that transfer any of the rights of the observatory or of TMT Observatory Corporation to TMT International Observatory LLC.
We, the Flores Case Ohana, comprised of myself, Pualani Case, Havani Rios, Kapolei Flores, and Ruth Alao, our ancestors, stand proudly with the other petitioners here, protectors, and other indigenous people who still standing and have to stand to protect not just what is sacred, but what is the essence of who we are. Mauna Kea is still sacred. Kukia imauna. We will stand as guardians with the heart of the mountain within us. Eo.
Then it was time for the other interveners opposed to TMT. Many of them were motivated to participate in the wake of the contentious stand on the mountain in 2015, just before the Supreme Court vacated the permit.
I am here today because I would die for that mountain. I would die for Aloha Aina. I would die knowing that my daughter would rise up and take my place. And if you think you've seen anything with us, you will see a force that you've never seen before with our keiki. She was raised in ceremony. She was raised with our language spoken to her every day. She was raised with no fear. She was born for this. Please. And if I do not shut this down, she will.
Was it worth it to arrest 58 Hawaiians, knowing that in a few months later, the court was going to go ahead and rule, oh, shucks, TMT, you couldn't go ahead anyway? Was that worth it? And it's happening again. We know no matter what side wins, this is going up to the top. It's been said on both sides. There's been motions made to stay of execution, in case this goes to appeal, which it will. Are we going to allow people to get arrested again? Knowing that the Supreme Court might indeed find that TMT did had no right to go ahead. Are we willing to make that decision? Are we willing to put these BLNR officers in this room up against their own ohana? I don't want to have to go face to face with Lino Kamakau again. But if I have to, I will. It has nothing personal against Lino. Lino, I have aloha for him. I don't want him to be in that position. I don't want to be in that position. But if we got to go there, I will go there. And I will not be alone. I can promise you that. I will not be alone.
My family has lost so many of our mo'olelo because of Christianity and colonization, generations of indoctrination, and to erase a space or to desecrate a space where myself and my keiki can exercise our birthright would be perpetuating the cultural genocide and erasure. We need to preserve these spaces for our keiki to be able to live and be Hawaii in perpetuity, meaning for infinite generations to come.
So we don't need, so I'm going to say this to Pueo guys, we don't need continued desecration and development to provide for the needs of education and for Native Hawaiians. All we have to do is uphold the law.
I was the only petitioner in this entire case that was denied to have a witness. The only petitioner. Now, this is very difficult because the purpose of a contested case is to allow the public to bring up information that has not been previously brought up before.
The Supreme Court could not have been more explicit about the need to observe the rules on due process. The numerous violations of the protector's due process rights in the current proceeding ignored that clear warning. The Temple believes that the proponents of the TMT who have been paying attention to this proceeding know that the permit is going to ultimately be denied. The problem is no one wants to be the one to pull the plug, so it appears we will have to go through the whole litigation process. Although there is the possibility that the April deadline that TMT set for pursuing construction will come before there's a final court order in the case, perhaps leading the TMT proponents to use that deadline as a reason for moving to the Canary Islands.
First, merely discrediting testimonies of recognized public health professionals does not satisfy the applicant's burden to show the TMT project is not materially detrimental to public health.
So the State of Hawaii Constitution, Article 19, shows the Kanaka Maoli people still have their nationality. The U.S. and the political subdivision cannot take their nationality away. Trying very hard, though. Usage and economic warfare to control and brainwash the Kanaka Maoli peoples that they are U.S. citizens and have self-appointed legal control over their lands. You have.
So my motion is for an indefinite stay until the federal questions can be heard in the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. District Court in D.C.
This Area E business, this Northern Plains business, is direct ethnocide, which is a type of genocide to me, because these places are named after people like my kupuna, Lilinoi, Pu'ulinoi, Pu'upoliahu, Pu'ukukahau'ula.
In additional location, the TMT project access road does not avoid impact to Kukaha'ula. It would place a roadway on the slopes of the traditional cultural properties.
This is the result. This is the result of my facts and findings. $400,000 of taxpayers' money. I have not been consulted. This has nothing in there that concerns me as a native Hawaiian. $400,000. I'm going to keep this stuff for history. This is part of my record, because this is probably not going to be the last time that we got to stand before a board and ask you to make the right decision, to consider the options before you allow this TMT to go back up there and start again. Because you're going to bring in, and I'm going to be there, I'm going to lay my body down in front of these guys until somebody pays attention and listens. And I know I'm not going to be the only one.
The Land Board took just over a week to make its decision in favor of 30-meter telescope, but the permit comes with numerous conditions, 43 of them. For example, the Land Board says the University of Hawaii must decommission 3 telescopes permanently as soon as reasonably possible, and no new observatories will be constructed on those sites. At least 2 additional facilities will be permanently decommissioned by December 31st, 2033, including the Very Long Baseline Array antenna and at least 1 additional observatory, the Land Board says. These conditions are in line with Governor David Ige's 10-point plan for Mauna Kea. Ige held a media briefing on Thursday following the decision.
He's fresh off the plane, Governor Ige.
Hello. I don't know if you wanted to start with a statement, or are you just open to questions? Well, I'm glad that the Board of Land and Natural Resources have completed their process. I thought it was a fair and rigorous examination of the permit. I've always been in support of the 30-meter telescope project. I think it's an important it's an important milestone. It certainly is an asset for the world, for Hawaii to be the eyes on the heavens and in the study of astronomy and space. And I'm glad that the process was completed and that we are able to move to the next steps.
Well, you're saying it was a rigorous process. Some would point to the fact that the hearings or the contested case hearing was completed maybe about a week ago, and then this vote was taken and the results came out. How can you assure the public, and especially maybe even opponents of the project, that it was indeed rigorous and that they did take the time to look over everything?
You know, certainly the contested case did result in thousands of documents and pages of testimony. I think Judge Amano had done a good job of consolidating and summarizing in her recommendations to the board. And clearly, the board members were aware of the proceedings during that entire time of the contested case.
What was the vote from the board? Was it all in favor?
No, the vote was 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Will construction be allowed to begin and proceed even if the case, as expected, goes to the Supreme Court and to the state Supreme Court, or will it have to await a Supreme Court ruling?
I do think that that's a decision for the court to decide. I'm not certain, you know, what the plans are for the 30-meter project itself, and then what the legal challenge might be.
Are there any steps that will be taken to ensure safety on the mountain if protesters or opponents say that they're going to try and block it while construction is going on?
Just as in the previous situation, we are committed to assure and protect the rights of individuals to claim and state their, voice their opinion on the project. At the same time, we are prepared to assure access to those who are permitted to proceed.
I mean, this has been a controversial project. What would you say to the people who have been opposed to it?
You know, I do believe that the board conducted a fair and rigorous process. The contested case allowed all those who wanted to voice their opinion. I think Judge Amano did a good job of allowing all participants the opportunity to say and provide their statements and the evidence that they wanted. So I feel like the process was fair, that it was conducted in the open. I'm proud of the board conducting it in such a way and look forward to the next steps.
Would there be concern also, there have been questions raised at the fact that the board took the vote not in a public session. How would you address those questions?
Well, I do know that that's the process for a contested case. You know, it's not the same as in a public meeting.
Is there any indication whether or not the protesters are going to back down?
No, I don't have any information on that.
Mayor, are you good?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Is Doug going to be on?
Thanks so much. Doug was at actually Hazard.
Oh, got it.
He was at Suzanne Cases.
No problem.
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
The Land Board attempted to address some of the pressing issues concerning Native Hawaiian cultural practices in the conditions. However, the participants opposed to TMT are already planning to file an appeal. It will likely go straight to the Hawaii Supreme Court as per a new state law. BLNR also got into some of the recommendations made by the nonprofit Perpetuating Unique Educational Opportunities, or PUEO, ordering UH and TMT to work with the Imiloa Astronomy Center, Office of Mauna Kea Management, and Kahuku Mauna to develop informational exhibits for visitors. Also, a plan to include Native Hawaiian cultural products among those sold at the Mauna Kea Visitor Information Station, and conditions to help at-risk children with opportunities in STEM education, and for UH Hilo to make reasonable accommodations for the use of facilities at Halepohaku for the Hawaiian Language and Hawaiian Studies programs at UH. Absent from the condition is specific mention of Imiloa Uka, or an amphitheater devoted to peace and education. Board Member Roerig had stern questioning of UH officials at the September 20th hearing.
The University of Hawaii didn't say one word about those conditions till today. Nothing in your presentation even addressed it, and neither did TIOs. So I don't know why I want to vote for this. I'm telling you right now, I live right in the middle of Keaukaha, and those at-risk kids are the people that we're looking after. And part of my extended family, the Hawaiians on Front Street, are related to me. You folks haven't addressed one iota of your fiscal energy to solving this problem. And it's right in front of you. You know it's a crucial issue. You haven't said anything about it. I'm greatly disturbed. I want to hear what kind of a commitment the university is going to make and how definite that commitment is. And I want to hear it now.
We did look at the conditions that were proposed by Pueo, and as Council said, we had no objection. The conditions didn't have numbers, but every single one of the aspirations that they stated were things that I'm not sure where we would put the amphitheater. I think there was a level of specificity on some of their conditions that we didn't work through. But in general, the conditions as I read them were to collaboratively work toward the future development of Imiloa Uka. I love the idea. We have talked about developing a stronger cultural education presence at Hale Pohaku, and that's actually very exciting to us.
But Roerig himself stands accused of having a conflict of interest when it comes to Pueo.
Mr. Roerig and his family, in renting or leasing property to Mr. Warfield and his nonprofit organization, was able to benefit by not having to pay the real property taxes associated with those properties. With all due respect to Mr. Roerig. What we glean from the record is that Mr. Warfield, who is the president of the nonprofit organization, also leases and resides on part of the property and pays rent for that property. So not only is there a financial consideration for Mr. Roerig, but there is also a potential conflict of interest between Mr. Roerig and Mr. Keahi Warfield, who again is the president of Pueo. That Mr. Roerig's status as a board member, we would ask, and we believe that it should happen that Mr. Roerig recuse himself from these proceedings and from voting on these proceedings.
Major conflict of interest that exists between members of this board and interveners. And even just having to witness board members testifying to secure funding for interveners such as Pueo. We're just having to witness that engagement, that interaction right now of board members trying to secure funding for other parties in this case.
I appreciate that. You've answered the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.